Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday Night Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. All right, guys, welcome to our Tuesday Night Podcast. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. This is our last Tuesday night live of 2023.
What a year it's been.
You know, I've said a couple times 2024. I think I've actually written it also. And I think it just has to do with us podcasting and forecasting and talking so much about 2024 kind of puts me, this may be the first year that I actually don't have to write 2023, scratch it out.
I know. We've been talking about 2024. We've been really figuring out what's going to happen next year, talking about it a lot.
It's going to be freaky.
Yeah.
We got a great guest, Tony Martinez. So Tony was, we just launched our Saturday video. It's done really well with Tony. So we're happy to have him join us tonight as sort of like a follow-up, talk about what's going on in the mortgages, with mortgages and foreclosures and short sales and why we haven't seen them yet. I think it's no surprise that, especially going into an election year, that the White House doesn't want to be dealing with a whole bunch of foreclosures. But I think that will only last for so long, and we'll see what happens. But we're honored to have Tony. Guys, we want to thank you so much for joining us every Tuesday night. We have such a great audience. I wish everyone the best in this upcoming year. And we have a poll out there. You know, we kind of went around the table the other day and, Christmas, and we're talking about New Year's resolutions. Do you make a New Year's resolution?
Yes, I make a New Year's resolution. I think, though, I just like to maybe change some habits, get clear, do a reset. That's what I like to do.
I don't really like New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
I don't like to say something that I can't keep. You know what I mean?
I get that.
I mean, I'm already really fit. I mean, I can't imagine, being any fitter.
Oh, Todd, you're great.
Fitness is measured in different ways.
Yes.
Once you hit over 50 years old. So
yeah.
Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. Anyway, introduce Tony and let's just jump in.
Gosh, everyone, it's so great to be here on this Tuesday night. Tony, thank you for being our guest this evening. I know you're coming from Florida, so go ahead and introduce yourself for those of you that did not have an opportunity to watch the most recent video that we had posted. Please tell us about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. Once again, thank you for the opportunity. Well, I'm here in South Florida, and we had some fun making fun of South Florida the other day. So I'm prepared to defend it just in case. I'm ready. But I'm all about education. What I do, my wife and I are private brokers. We own our own independent real estate offices here in South Florida. But for the past 2.5 years, I have focused on the education side of it. And that started when I acquired the CDPE designation, Certified Distressed Property Expert. It's a course that is well known for teaching real estate professionals how to work with distressed homeowners, especially those that are underwater. And from there, we just expanded into other courses and designations so that we're a well-rounded organization that's devoted to making our industry better.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much for your time. Really going to be looking forward to what you have to say. Everything is just so darn unaffordable right now. And really, so many people are feeling that. And we've got the loan modifications that are going on. And some people are even having a hard time making those work. Yeah. So it's going to be good to hear from you tonight.
Sure.
Why don't you tell us how's business?
Well, South Florida is doing fantastic. I mean, there's no doubt. And in our last podcast, we talked about how we are a tale of two cities here. In one respect, we're doing phenomenal. Sales are still very strong. Even the prices are still increasing. But there's a shortage of inventory, as that's what's happening across the country. We're benefiting from the fact that we are a beacon for South Americans. They're still coming over here in droves. That's driving the market. Plus all of the folks that are relocating from California and the Northeast. That's again brought a lot of attention to our area. It's also brought some challenges because you mentioned affordability. If you're a local trying to compete with all these cash buyers that are coming in from other states and everything, you're in a tough spot. But, regardless of the market, there's always going to be individuals that are going through a difficult time. And that's one of the things I try to focus on is just create awareness that, it's not necessarily through any fault of their own. Bad things happen to good people. People get sick, people get divorced, people pass away, people lose their jobs. And I just wish people were a little bit more understanding, not to put everyone in a category that says they're irresponsible and they took on more than they should have. And yes, there are folks that took on more than they should have, but there's the other side of it as well. So, but Florida, we're a different game over here, and how long it lasts, I don't know. My crystal ball is really cloudy on that part.
Yeah, well, it's define South Florida.
Well, South Florida is, we are an amazing community because we are so
No,
diverse.
as far as you're talking about Miami, you're talking about,
Okay,
give us some
okay.
geographical points.
The Tri-County area, Miami, everybody thinks Miami. And yes, that's Miami-Dade County. And then just north of there is Broward County. And north of there is Palm Beach County. That's the big Tri-County area where the bulk of the population is. And then, of course, in the center of the state, you got Orlando. On the West Coast, you have Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota. So, but yes, I pretty much focus as far as our brokerage is primarily the South Florida market. When it comes to the education side, I'm working with agents across the entire country.
Let's check out Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. You say you have a lot of migration that's happening. So can you define the migration? Are these illegal immigrants that are migrating? Would define when you say that you're getting massive migration. Can you break that down?
No, we are talking folks that are coming into the country legally. A lot of them are escaping governments that are not stable, the governments that are less than democratic, also crime, also economic challenges. So what they do is whenever they can, they come here. The top countries are Venezuela, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil. That leads the way as far as the South American contingent. But that's continuing to fuel. And then also too, we've also become now a destination for the high tech as well. And so we get a lot of high tech industries coming down here.
Yeah, and the only reason I ask is I didn't know whether you were talking about the rental markets exploding. I'm looking here at 849.72. Okay, so in Miami we've got about 7,236 active listings right now. And it looks like about 849 of those have had price reductions. So when you say you're seeing prices going up, are you talking about, define that a little bit? Are these prices, Tony, that you're looking at the end of the day once they're, once they've posted on the MLS that they've sold for above list price? Is that what you're saying?
Well, here's the thing that we still get multiple offers without a doubt. We are still selling above list price, but what's happening is there's some sanity returning to the market in terms of expectation versus realization. So sellers still want to try to net as much as possible. They may list the price significantly over, and then they're having to make these price adjustments so that people will actually pay attention. But even then, once it closes, we are still closing in a positive sense as far as our prices are still up.
Yeah. And then would you say your inventory has adjusted downward in the month of December coming into the holidays?
Well, in October across the country, 95% of all markets inventory is actually up. So there are a few that are down. Miami is one in particular that we definitely don't have enough inventory. But the good news for consumers and also for the industry is we are seeing the inventory across the country starting to go up.
Yeah. That's what we're seeing. It was funny. I I'm going to do a video here coming up on Maryland, and we cover 9 markets here in Maryland, 9 of the major markets, really surrounding Baltimore and DC, including Baltimore City. And we saw a major reduction in inventory in the month of December, and but we also saw a lot of price reductions too. So we're anywhere across the board. About 35 to 42% of the inventory in the 9 major markets have experienced it, that are active right now, have had at least one price reduction. But there's interesting metrics that kind of throw things off, and that is new construction, because a couple of things have really changed from a snapshot standpoint. We use Bright MLS. I'm really disappointed in this, but it's another step for an agent to be able to, before we could go in Bright MLS and we could search and we could see, we could sort based on price reductions, and then we could see activity at a snapshot, at a glance in the full listing, where it showed the date of a change in the listing. One that concerns me and my clients are price reductions. They sort of eliminated that on the, on the easy find. It's another step to be able to kind of look and say, okay, well, these houses are, I can't just shop by price reduced in the MLS easily, and then I can't determine when those price reductions took place at a glance. I now have to go to another page individually per listing and do that. So I don't know how they're manipulating, the data should be getting easier for us to find. But I think that, they're trying to make it more difficult for us to actually be able to navigate and get a clear, true, up-to-date snapshot of the inventory and what's happening in the market. But I will tell you something very interesting that I've noticed in, just looking for homes for my clients, is that a lot of the price increases that we are witnessing on the MLS are the new home construction. And they kind of it seems like they almost cherry pick what they put on the multiple list. As far as new homes available for sale, a lot of shadow inventory that they don't put on there. But what they do make sure that they do is that they put a higher price on when it was sold based on what the list price was, because people will add things to the listing. So, all this stuff at the end of the day really makes it difficult to analyze the data. But while we're on the subject of doing that, I want to kind of point it out, because the National Association of Realtors on October 23rd, and it's again trying to find the NAR to aggregate data that is relevant. Number one, we're looking at such backward looking data, but some of it is so backward looking that it almost seems irrelevant. But they throw these numbers out there. They publish these, statistics, and you kind of look at them, you're like, what, okay, but how does that relate to right now? In other words, what they're doing, in my opinion, is everything they can to bury the real numbers or the real data. But there's 2 charts that I want to show us before we get in to, your opinions on, delinquencies and things like that, because I know they're on the rise. And we can kind of talk about what our bold predictions would be for 24, at least, what I'm telling my clients and how we're navigating, zooming in on inventory and projecting, where my clients want to be and where I think they will be. But 2 charts I want to look at right now. This is existing home sales median price, and this is just recently published. This is a percent change year over year. And, of course, everybody wants to say home prices are rising, they're going up. And again, that's another metric that's very difficult, because we'd have to take 2 exact homes side by side. We would have to compare, these 2 exact subjects, which never exists. Lots are different in characteristic and things like that, but they always want to push for the rise. Everything's rising. If you look here, 11 on the right side, 4% year over year increase as of November of 2023. If somebody glanced at that for, a second, they would go, wow, home prices are going up. But quickly, I want to just look at this next chart, because a lot of this you have to really dig into to see what's going on. This next chart is really something to me that speaks volumes. And it's a percent change in sales from a year ago on by price range. So we can look that the less expensive houses are way down, right? Because they don't exist. And and these are the meat and potato. This is the heartbeat of America. Your middle class, your median income earners, and what they can or should afford in comfortably to have a nice roof over their head in an area where they actually work, or desire to live. But the interesting thing is, when we were just looking at median price chart, we can flip back to that real quick, where it showed in November year over year was up 4%. And we flip back to this percent change in sales from a year ago by price range, 5.7% increase in 750,000 to a million, and 13.4% increase on a million plus. Now, look, guys, let's just be realistic with one another here. Isn't it easy to bump up median sales price when almost 20% of the sales from a year ago are over $750,000? Do you think that bumps up median home price? The answer, let me save you from your calculations, is yes. Because a median price is everything under and everything over. They take it's the middle price. It's the median price. Well, if we're looking at sales that are down in the bulk of the home sales are negative year over year, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. I love all you rocket scientists out there, mathematicians. We don't need you, though, to figure this out. All we have to do is look at the charts and study the data. So I think one of the most aggravating things for somebody that is trying to answer calls, drive people around to look at houses, and advise my clients and people that call in and comment in, is that we get the other people that only look at hey, we're up 4%, home prices are up 4% year over year, but they're not looking at the rest of the data. So they don't, but then the people that are in the streets looking for houses, they get it. They understand. These are the ones that are sidelined. It's everyone else that's making these comments saying that prices will never come down, and they can't come down or won't come down. It's not. Prices aren't sustainable. So, Tony, what do you think about that? You agree with my analysis here of showing these charts that?
Well, the numbers, people kind of they interpret it the way they want to see it. It's almost like in the delinquency arena. When you look at overall mortgage delinquencies, the number is relatively low, very low, 3.26. Well, of course, the industry is going to circle the wagons and say, look at the default rate, delinquency rate. Look how low it is, historically low. Oh, okay, but then you look at FHA mortgages, which is the lifeblood of the everyday potential homeowner out there, and that delinquency rate is 9.5%.
One in 10.
Yeah,
1 in 10.
So we're not going to talk about
FHA
that.
loans.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that because the numbers really don't make us look good. But what you just pointed out right now is that folks in the upper income brackets have not been anywhere near as impacted, economically speaking, as the everyday American. The people that are the ones that are buying $1 million homes. I don't think they were too upset when gas was $5 a gallon down here. But for the average folks that was trying to buy, hey, do I fill my tank, or do I pay for medication? Do I pay for food? Those are the ones that are struggling right now. So it's definitely two different tales.
We have been talking about for years. So when we went through the 2008 crisis, the talk was that the housing market would never crash because of the baby boomers. The number of baby boomers and Gen X's that were buying houses and foreign investors, and they were keeping the sales up. And then the tail since then has been, the millennial buyers, 30%, 33% of the buyers being millennials. I think in the last year, it's dropped down under 30% for the first time in many years, because they're the first time buyers that are getting priced out. But there was an interesting article that was published today on yahoofinance.com. And it's talking about there's Meredith Whitney she was coined as the Oracle of Wall Street. She was one of the ones that predicted the 2008 GFC, along with others, right, that have taken credit for accurately predicting that. I mean, they could see it coming, sort of like a lot of the indicators that we're seeing now. But she spoke at this Yahoo Finance Investment Conference, and had made a statement. You can see the search for the article, but said that a silver tsunami of baby boomers would start downsizing in 2024 and 2025, like 51% of them. So it's a big number. Right now, baby boomers make up about 76 million people. Gen X right behind it. But what she had said, that over the next 2 years, we could see another 30 million houses hit the market. And the tail has been recently that has supported all of this nonsense of why house prices won't crash, why we won't see the biggest bubble ever in housing won't crash, is because of inventory issues. She's predicting 30 million houses could be put on the market, single family houses, or a lot of these would be going into retirement communities, moving in with family members, downsizing into condos over 55 plus, where the bulk of the buyers won't move into, right? You can't, Gen Zs make up 72 million right now, 72 million people that are coming in. A lot of the Gen Zs are now actively buying houses, 25-year-olds, 24, 23-year-olds buying houses. So there's going to be a wave of these people that will be wanting to buy. And but anyway, let's kind of talk about, you're teaching people to deal with the flip side of it. Not very sexy, but we know it's happening. We know there's an increase in delinquencies happening. Let's talk first about the bailouts that are continuing, because there's existing bailouts that are happening right now, the new bailouts with VA. We got FHA bailouts right around the corner, where they're giving up to $1,000, I believe it is, mortgage credit on their mortgage payment, up to $1,000 for a minimum of 3 years, right? They wanted to get this thing signed, I think, before the end of the year. I don't think that's happening, but they're going to try and jam it down. This 10% almost of delinquent FHA borrowers, it's not counting VA, it's not counting conventional, which are low numbers. But let's talk a little bit about what you know about these bailouts that are in place.
Well, I think the biggest bailout that we've seen in the past couple of years happened as a result of COVID. And forbearance is the term that was on so many lips across the country. And normally that would not even be part of folks' lexicon, but they went ahead and said forbearance. So imagine a time when, the government says, hey, folks, you don't have to make your payments if you don't want to. That wasn't exactly how it was written. It was like, hey, COVID hit, people are struggling. If you want to take advantage and not make your payments for 6 months, go ahead. People didn't even have to provide a reason, and there's no penalty, right? It's not going to do anything to your credit, any of that stuff. Well, when you're given the offer to do 6 months, not pay your mortgage, well, 8.7 million Americans took advantage of that opportunity. And then it was extended an additional 6 months, then an additional 6 months, and FHA was 24 months. So that was the first big bailout, was the government stepping in and saying, okay, You don't have to make your payments. And listen, I understand as a homeowner, I'm kind of like in the center. You know, my heart bleeds for these folks that are going through this challenge, but I'm also very concerned when I see government stepping in and making or putting up in place these artificial, temporary solutions, which I think are just a band-aid on a hemorrhage, because eventually the chickens will come home to roost. But I think everybody just wants to kick the can down the road. So maybe it's a different administration's problem or something like that. But yeah, I think you mentioned VA. They just announced that this month, where they told all their servicers, because the VA delinquency rate isn't anywhere near as high as FHA. It's about 3.76%. But from a psychological perspective, if there's any segment of the population that you don't want to see losing their home, are veterans, for everything that they've done for our country. So they just stepped in and they said, hey, servicers, put all type of foreclosure activity on hold through May of 2024. So of course, this is great for those folks that are going through a tough time, and they're going to use this time to try to work something out with the servicer to do everything possible to help these homeowners stay in their home. They're going to do probably one or two things. One is that they can take the unpaid amounts, the delinquent amounts, the arrears, and they can add it on as an additional loan, interest-free, on the property. And that's great. But I like to circle back around in the potential problems there. And then there's another program that they're going to be launching, VASP. They're going to be launching in March or May of next year, where FHA, when other solutions don't work, they are actually going to step in and acquire that note, purchase that mortgage, and make that mortgage part of a national portfolio. So that's going to be very interesting. Then the question comes, will FHA do something similar? Can they? Obviously, the number of VA loans is nowhere near the amount of FHA loans. Now, before I forget, one of the main reasons why I acquired my designation and started teaching on this again is I started thinking down the road. If 8.7 million Americans take up the offer of not making your payments, how many will forget or not realize that at some point they're going to have to pay that back? And that's what we're seeing now, is that we're seeing folks that didn't realize that the $20,000, $30,000 in payments that you didn't make, it's now a secondary loan on your property. So you may not be selling right now, but when you go to sell in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, this might come up to bite you because they totally forgot that was done.
Well, why don't you explain to everybody what it is that your company does in detail? Because you're predicting that there will be, and this is really crazy, because when we think about the government buying basically being the owner of the property, being the landlord, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. The government.
Well,
I mean, essentially,
they'll own the note. They're going to be basically
essentially
the
they're the
investor behind
landlord.
the scene.
They're the landlord. I mean, if they're basically dealing with people that aren't paying their rent. I mean, come on. It's a forbearance. It's a forever forbearance program. I mean, okay, so they're going to assume the debt, and essentially what you're doing is renting from the government. You have 40-year mortgages. I mean, come on. Who does 40-year mortgages? That's insanity. We know that every penny that you're paying is going towards the interest on the note. You're never going to own the property at that rate. And then if they're just keep extending it and extending it and extending it, what is that? You're enabling people to stay in their houses and not pay for them. The problem is this, Tony. The problem is this. The problem is, what are they going to do? Marcia Fudge, the HUD Secretary of HUD. Mm-hmm. So she was just interviewed. I was I don't know. I was half asleep when I was watching it. I need to go back and watch it. I don't even remember. It was either CNBC or one of these mainstream outlets was interviewing her, and talking about how they were working to, and they do a lot of good work. I'm not trying to say that people don't need help and that we shouldn't have, equal rights of ownership, and, we shouldn't be discriminating. I mean, I understand all that. They want to talk about everything though, with providing, you know, mortgages to people that have really low credit scores now. I mean, subprime level, borrowers really, I mean, under 600 credit scores, and, people that don't have any money down, giving them down payment assistance programs. There's no skin in the game. Now they're talking about, and what I think she was saying, I need to go back, but it was something to the fact that these people are going to need money to put, borrowers are going to need money to put roofs on the house, or, fix things up and things like that. So they were going to give these borrowers, loans or grants or money for that and stuff like that. The problem is it's not a long-term sustainable fix. The issue becomes, that they have to continually maintain the home. And a lot of people don't understand that about home ownership, right? You have to continually spend money. Things fall apart, they break. What are we going to do about that?
Well, I think one of the things that they're counting on is that historically, VA loans have always had a very low delinquency rate. Even back in 2008, during that crisis, the veterans, by and large, they kept making their payments and honoring the contracts if they could. I think they're counting on that being the case as well. But you bring up a good point. If they're now the owner of the note, and ideally the folks are making their payments, and when the time comes to sell, they go ahead and sell, the government gets their full money. Yeah, but what happens if they stop making their payments and it's now the VA that holds the note? Is the VA actually going to foreclose on veterans, its own veterans? So that would be very interesting, because there's certain percentage of that is definitely going to happen.
I think I'm not really talking about the VA loans so much as I'm referring to the FHA.
Well, on the FHA, and I remember that
The
doing
higher delinquency right now, almost 10% mortgage delinquency.
Okay, so just to make the transition, I wanted to make that clear also, because from our last podcast, there was one person that said, "Hey, the VA, that's not subprime." I go, you and I are on the same page that FHA is the new subprime. We never ever included VA loans in that category at all. But absolutely, there's two issues here, right? There is, are we going to continue to lower the bar to allow people to buy homes? And I get it. Everyone wants to be a homeowner. I wish that could be true, but in the real world sense, it's very difficult, right? So are we creating a situation that we're going to have future delinquencies, future defaults? And then what are we going to do with the almost 10% that we have right now? What type of workouts are going to be implemented that's going to enable folks to stay in there? And how many strikes will they get before finally they obviously do face foreclosure? But if I could ask something too, Todd, I think one of the things that, because I tend to have my message go to the industry, I'm constantly educating the realtors on what they should be doing. And, you got me thinking the other day that maybe I need to change my approach, and I need to start educating the consumer as much as I'm doing the agent. Because
the agents are commission driven, man.
Well,
they're commission driven. They're not, I mean, let's face it. I mean, it's the industry both you and I serve. We're in it. But the problem is that, the ones that need the real education are the consumers. They're the ones that need to, because they're misguided. They're misled. I mean, we're not talking about, we're talking about bailouts, not, helping people to save money, be able to save money. I mean, you've got that. So it's like this. Let's just take everybody's money and then give them enough to live, sort of like a substandard type of lifestyle because we're going to control everything instead of teaching them how to thrive, reducing costs, reducing, wrongful spending, wasteful spending, actually build affordable housing,
Yeah.
free up some of the land in the area, get rid of the red tape, and let's do this in a very expeditious fashion so that we can start to get people in homes that they can afford. Instead, we're looking at, well, they don't have down payment money, let's give it to them. Well, they don't have enough to pay their mortgage payment, but let's provide that break for them. This is nuts. Let's teach people how to be self-sufficient, how to take care of their own finances, be responsible for the decisions that they make. But that doesn't seem to be on the agenda.
Well, like you said, a lot of folks are money driven, and real estate is an industry that drives a lot of other industries as well. So, on the surface, it sounds like a good idea that the more folks that are able to buy, the better off we are as a country.
They would
and
be more
economy.
people that could buy, Tony.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
I mean, respectfully, so I interrupted you, but there would be that we would have a healthier, ownership, a debt to income ratio, and 8 and 9 times earnings to be able to buy a house. At what point is that a great idea?
Well, I think what you're proposing, and it's very logical, is a long-term solution. But unfortunately, that's not how politicians think, and that's not how a lot of people in the industry think, right? I joke that a lot of folks in this business, they don't even buy green bananas. They don't think that far out. So it's kind of like, what can we do right now? What can we do to make this quarter better, make this year better? Not what can we do that long term is going to be for the greater good. Something else.
And it's not tiny houses either. I'm hearing all this stuff where they're like, "Oh, I'm building a community of tiny houses." Well, that's great. $64,000 for a house that you can roll over and touch the wall, from one side to the. I mean, this is not the answer, right? We're not talking tiny houses. We're not talking about more RV parks that people can live in or park their car and hook up to a water source. We're talking about homes 12, 15, 1,600 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, basic, safe accommodations, right? That meets building codes. There was nothing wrong with the building codes of the 1980s and the 1990s. We don't need to add sprinkler systems, every single house, in my opinion, right? We don't have to put, you're on a well and now you got to put a $25,000 sprinkler system in a house, and you're trying to build a house that costs that you could sell for $200,000. We have to cut through this, red tape and encourage developers now, right now. If we're in a housing crisis, an affordability crisis, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, they can mow down the 4,000, 5,000 square foot houses that they can't sell. Right? You can't sell those houses? Let's bulldoze them. Right now, let's build some houses that people can afford. When we're looking at 750,000 plus is the driving factor in how they're saying home prices rise every single year, and we're looking at no home prices, right? Houses that people can't afford are pushing the numbers up every single year, right? We're still looking at a bunch of people that are terribly sorry they bought a home in the last 3 years. They're so remorseful. I looked at a house. I didn't have time to do it today. There's a house locally that I pulled up on the MLS. I was looking at it for one of my clients, and these people bought this house in 2021 for like $720,000. They've been trying to sell it almost ever since. A nice house too. I mean, it's not, it is the house still looks great by the current pictures online. It just closed. They sold it for 750. And so you could say, well, 2 years they went from 724 to 750. They probably lost $25,000 selling the house with transfer, recordation fees, real estate commissions, anything that they had to fix on the house during inspections or whatever. I'm just speculating. But at the very least, they lost 10 grand, 15 grand. These are people that we're seeing these houses come on the market right now. We're seeing people that bought in 21 that are selling right now. And why is that? Because they bought at the height of the market, end of 21, beginning of 22. They're remorseful, man. They're like, wow, I had no idea, right?
But let me ask you something. You mentioned building affordable homes. Well, what incentive does a developer have to build homes in the
None.
$300,000 range? So
None.
None. That's the whole thing.
I built houses.
Yeah.
I mean, I know all about it. I mean, the problem is they have to spend so much money in infrastructure before they can even stick a shovel in the ground. I mean, I'm getting permits on a project right now, and it's taken months to get building permits. Months. I mean, the county's not flooded. It's in Baltimore County. They're not flooded with building permits. 2 months, 3 months to get a simple building permit and to build an addition on an existing house. And it's like, okay, you got 7 departments you go through, and they write their comments down and get back to here to there to whatever. Now they're deliberating on, all right, well, you're going to almost double the square foot. It's 1,600 square foot house. You're going to put a 1,600 square foot. It's a 2-car garage on part of the house. It's like not exactly living square feet. Now they're trying to determine whether I need to put a sprinkler system in, and I'm like, okay, so now we've got to do a water flow test at the street. If they make me put a sprinkler system in, I got to make sure that I meet that. If not, they're going to do a water flow test further up the street to determine how much of the pipe that I need to pay to replace in the street in order to get enough water flow to put a sprinkler system in. When I was doing this years ago, I haven't really been doing much development and building since I started Sachs Realty in 2017. But, that backed me, basically I've been focusing on this business, but I can't tell you the costs just to build a house or renovate a house is so astronomical, and it all gets pushed to the developer. So there's no incentives, ingress, egress, going into the community lane, building another lane in front of the property, curb and gutter, stormwater management, on and on and on and on, right? The bonds that you have to, post, you got hundreds of thousands of dollars in bonds, sometimes millions of dollars in bonds, stormwater management bonds, grading bonds, just to stick a shovel in the ground, right? It's overkill. Yeah. But so is everything when it comes to construction. So I mean, it's gotten so far out of hand. Everybody has their hand in it. So that's what I'm talking about. After World War II, they had a housing crisis. The government stepped in and reduced the red tape back then, which was a heck of a lot less than it is now, and incentivized developers and builders to quickly put housing up to satisfy the demand. Instead, we've put all of this, there's so much money being made by special interest groups, so much lobbying being done, green energy, okay? I'm telling you, you have no idea, right? You hear what they want to tell you about the impact that we can maybe make in 1,000 years, and I'm not being sarcastic, right? The impact that we can make. You have no idea the people that are getting paid by their products that they've lobbied to get put into the house, right? Or the development, the construction project, right? To do this is jacking these costs up so high. You take a piece of land that you want to build on. It happens. People go through it all the time. They buy a piece of land, they want to build a house on it, or their family subdivides the land. The government will tell you where you put your house on the property. You can't even pick that. It's called a building envelope. They're going to tell you where you have to put. They make you cluster houses together. You've got all this space that you can't use, and you can't stick your house right in the middle of the property. So many regulations, and that's what they do to these builders, preventing them from wanting to build a 15 or 1,600 square foot house. what people really need. But we're so disconnected. We don't even know. These politicians don't even know what people need, right? They're so disconnected.
Well, I think also, and it's kind of weird because I was thinking tiny houses, tiny homes earlier today. Now I know your position on there, but I think that expectation
It's
is
an
part of it.
insult.
Well,
It's an
hold on,
insult. You're telling people
hold-
you can't afford this. We're going to stick you in this.
Well, okay, but hear me out. What about the premise that when you're first starting out, there's this thing called a starter home? See, I remember a time when you first started, you got what you could, and then you three or
I don't
four or
believe in
5 years.
starter homes.
You don't believe so what is the entry point then for
That's
these?
the pressure. That's the pressure. Hey, this isn't good enough. This is the problem, Tony. This isn't good enough. This is a starter home. Be satisfied. We're going to jack you up on this starter home, right? But it's only a starter home. And one day, hopefully, you'll aspire to be even more in debt with a non-starter home, a move-up home. What's a starter home? Now, I grew up in a duplex that was probably 1,000 square feet that my grandfather grew up in when he was a kid, right? I mean, what's wrong with that? When I was going through school, in the 70s and 80s, my friends' parents lived in that. There's some that are still living in their house that they raised their kids in. What's wrong with that? I think the problem is just that. Why have starter homes? You know what? Why build these communities where we have a glut of housing right now that no one can afford, and put the pressure on people that they're going to spend 50% of their income or more on a house that they don't need?
Yep. Now you're making me think about It's a Wonderful Life. We just watched it yesterday, right? So that was kind of it, right? Build
Great video,
homes,
great movie.
build homes that people can afford, and make it accessible for the masses.
Yeah, I mean, look, the pressure, and I've said it before on this podcast, and I've talked to people about it. I've witnessed it, having clients building houses that have divorced, while they're building a house. They hate each other by the time they're done. The pressure that goes on, the financial pressure, the number one reason, one of the number one reasons for divorce is, financial pressures, right? And, it's such a divide. And this is the whole banking industry that's gotten us into this mess. It's evil, right? They get us into this debt. One of the things I like about Dave Ramsey, and I don't agree with the things that he says all the time, but he helps a lot of people achieve financial freedom. And there's a lot to say about not owing the bank money. But we've gotten so far away from that. We would be able to vacation more, enjoy more, time with our family and our friends, not be stressed out about credit card debt if we weren't overburdened by the cost of our housing. And look, and I see one of the comments here, Todd's too young to be a boomer, whatever. Yes, I am, by the way. I'm a Gen Xer, but this isn't an old person thing, man. Young people wake up. That's what needs to happen. You young people need to wake up. You're being sold down the river to debt. Buy now, pay later. Yeah. It's a trap.
Well, it's immediate gratification, right? I mean, we as realtors know that. Well, let me ask you this. When someone's buying a home, what's their main concern? The price of the home or monthly the mortgage payments? Yeah, so that's all they care about. And so, if you could go ahead and make it a 40-year mortgage, make it a 50-year mortgage, do whatever you need to do, of course, people are going to take you up on those offers. Now, let me ask you this. What's going to happen when you're sitting in this property that you own and are making your payments on time, and it happens to be a regular Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan, right? Government-sponsored entity. To your left is a veteran who now the loan belongs to the government and may or may not be making their payments. And to the right, there's an FHA loan, which may or may not also have some kind of a bailout associated with it. And maybe they're making their payments, but maybe they're not, but they're still in the home. How incentivized are you to continue to make your payments? And then how upset are you going to be when you find out that you're one of few people that are making their payments in order to stay in their homes. And
That's
that
what happened in '08.
That's what happened in '08. And
Yep.
you know what we haven't talked about yet is that people will hold on to their homes as long as they feel that the equity is there. If we do see a huge reduction, and that's the industry's divided on that. But back in '08, when you bought a property for 600,000, and next thing you know, people are selling around you for 300,000, you didn't want to keep your home anymore, right? You wanted to get out from underneath that and buy right down the street into 300,000 again. So again, you can't do it in a vacuum. Once people are being assisted in one capacity or another, the rest are going to say, but what about me? Why aren't you doing something for me?
Rightfully so, right? I mean, come
Yeah.
on. It's interesting. Well, I'm not going to talk about that. Anyway, look, there are a lot of people. I know a lot of people that went through the '08 crisis and stopped paying their mortgage, and they could afford to do so. I mean, they were basically like exactly what you're saying.
Strategic default.
Yeah, they said, "Hey, I could buy the house across the street for $150,000 less than my house that I paid for my house or that I owe on my house right now. I'm not paying this mortgage.
Yeah.
We
the
bought it
lenders,
overpriced."
yeah. Now, I don't think that's going to happen again. They may want to do it, but back in '08, the lenders were overwhelmed. They had so many foreclosures. People took advantage of that. They played the system. I think now the lenders know and are prepared. So if you try to do one of those, dump and buy, it's not going to work, So, but I would like to reach out to the consumer right now that is behind on their payments. Whether you have an FH, a lot of people don't even know what kind of loan they have. But here's the thing, what you don't want to do is put your head in the sand and not take any steps at all. Call the servicer. Because in 50% of foreclosures back in the day, the servicer was never able to get the homeowner on the phone. Great things can happen when you just pick up the phone when they call you or initiate the conversation. And look into what kind of programs they have, because there are going to have more pressure on them to work something out. So look into all these scenarios before you give up, and definitely never walk away from the home. If you have no choice but to leave, then exit with dignity and let a realtor that knows what they're doing list your property for sale. And I can't believe how many people right now that have equity in their properties are letting the banks take the home. It just is borderline criminal.
Let's talk about the National Association of Realtors for a minute. Do you have any idea where we're going to end up this year with the number of existing home sales?
No, I'm not that big a numbers person. I kind of focus more on the distress side and everything else. Now, as a broker owner myself, sales are down. There's no doubt that sales are down across the board. We're going to see what the recent study came out that about 45% of real estate brokers can't make their lease payments right now. So yeah, we have more realtors than we have listings, and we don't have anywhere near the sales that we have to support the industry.
Oh, I have some data on that too. Agents, agent counts, stuff like that. The NAR last year, this time predicted, and just for some kind of, we hear all these predictions going into 2024 about home sales. There's a lot of articles. One of the things that I have said, and whether I'm right in my theory or not, but they talk about inventory being down. I think that a lot of the affordable inventory that's sitting on the market is just, obviously it's lived in by people that are not motivated to sell because of various reasons. Number one, home prices, where are they going to go? What are they going to buy? They would be paying more with the interest rates than they would. I think it's fair to say that we will see mortgage interest rates decline moving into 2024. I don't think it's going to happen like people think it is. I think last week the average in America, according to Fannie Mae, I believe was about 6.75% for 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Still way up over a year ago. Well, we're right about the same as a year ago, but way up over early 22 prices when home sales were really booming up to about May or June of 2022. But there was, going in, it's always like, everybody wants to, and I understand wanting to stay positive and keep things going. But I don't think that the Fed dropping rates right now is going to have much of an impact on home sales prices. It may impact home sales. We may see people, if home prices come down, but I think we're looking at the exact same scenario as 2007, 2008, where they dropped the interest rates, mortgage rates drop, and buyers wait for price drops. I think we're at that point. If we see things repeat themselves, I'm not, as you guys, many of you that follow me on the channel, whether you disagree with me or not, I don't believe in the scenario that the interest rates are going to drop and the home prices are going to soar again. And I base it purely not on an equity standpoint, because a lot of it is it more important the equity that's in circulation in America, or is it interest rates? I believe that equity does play a big part of it, but we're talking about people buying houses. They're not buying a house for the equity. They're buying a house to live in it, to pay a monthly payment. And that's what I think the big disconnect is on all of the people that are trying to predict what's going to happen in the market. These macroeconomic experts, forecasters are stuck in this warp of, prices are only going to go up because it has to do with the amount of equity. Now, I would say a home buyer's equity would be their bank account, but they don't have that. So if we were dealing with people that were putting first-time buyers putting 20% down on properties, or having $50,000, $60,000 in the bank, then I would say, yes, you're right. You could drop interest rates and probably flood the market with first-time buyers, 30% of the homes being sold first-time buyers. You could flood that market with them if they had equity in the bank, cash. They don't have cash. They have debt. They have student debt, lots of it, in default. They have credit card debt, lots of it, in delinquent status for a lot of it, or carry over month to month. They have 6 and 7 year auto loan payments, a lot of it in default. We have more repossessions, auto repossessions. Now, Tony has this data we can look at, more automotive repossessions than we have repo men to repossess. So I think we're missing the mark on this, dropping interest rates. Now it's too late. People are crushed. The economy, the only way to reset this is to see some type of a downward pressure on prices, home prices, to get into the range of the at least 4 to 5 times earnings. You make $100,000 a year, maybe you can buy a $400,000 or $500,000 house, not an $800,000 house. So the numbers right now don't work. But I just want to say this, that NAR predicted last year that we would be down this year, but at 4.78 million existing home sales is what they predicted. They said that would be down 6.8% from the 5.13 million in 22. We're not going to hit 4 million. We're going to be somewhere in the 4,800,000 some odd number. I'm sorry, 3,800,000 number for existing home sales this year. Almost $1 million, almost a million houses less than what NAR predicted would happen this year. We're almost down 1 million. That's 25%. If 4 million, we're down 1 million. That's a big number.
Well, something you mentioned, because again, even the experts are divided on what's going to happen, right? And you have the segment that says minute interest rates start to come down, and we are seeing them come down without a doubt. But I think, and again, I'm not an economist, but I think everyone's counting on the fact that the feds are going to start lowering the rate, maybe in Q1, maybe in Q2. We don't know. I don't have that crystal ball. And that our industry is a lagging indicator, right? When you go back to 2007 and everything else, there were steps that were made to make it, to bring rates down and everything else. And we still went into a housing bubble burst, and we still went into a recession. And I think that that's part of what the country doesn't look at. I tend to track unemployment rates, and that's what happens because people keep asking me, where do you see it's not going to be the same as 2008 because we don't have these subprime loans. We don't have all this. I go, no, I think it's going to be driven by unemployment. And I think that takes a while for it to catch up. The steps that are being done to tighten the market and restrict the credit and everything else, we're not going to see the full effect of these for another quarter or two. And then I do believe that we're going to see a significant number of job losses. Again, that's my humble opinion, but I track this one website called dailyjobcuts.com. I go in there and you start looking to say, wow, there's a lot more layoffs happening across the country than I thought there were, because it's just not part of the narrative and it's not talked about.
Most of the jobs they're reporting are government jobs, non-farm payroll, government jobs. And, you know, they can't, the government's in so much debt right now. I don't know how they're adding more debt by hiring more people. And, you know, but the numbers are, I think everyone that dives into it would agree. They come back and readjust the numbers.
Every month.
They're not accurate.
They revise them.
They revise the numbers. They're never as good as they say that they are, but we get this rally. And, you know, because people are only listening to mainstream media, most people are listening to mainstream media. They're the narratives that are being pushed. And, you know, they want to say, oh, well, this jobs report just came out, so you're wrong. It's never going to happen. But then, like you said, then real people are losing their jobs. We have a wave of automation that's going to be coming that is going to take so many jobs. And people don't even have an idea of, you know, just how bad it will be. I mean, just look at, you know, the AI now. I mean, it's, you know, how many people are using it for their jobs so they don't have to think anymore. Well, guess what? Well, companies aren't going to need these people. If they're just they'll hire one person to quickly produce, you know, what they need to produce that 10 people were, you know, working to produce. So I think that it's crazy. What do you what's your prediction on real estate agents? Let's talk about real estate agents, and then we'll answer some questions.
Yeah.
My prediction, Rocky 3, wasn't it, where they said they asked Mr. T, "What's your prediction?" He said, "Pain." You know, that's what we're experiencing right now. You know, we started the year with, I think, 1.6 million realtors. And look, I'm a realtor myself. The country doesn't need 1.6 million realtors. You know, so we knew that number was inflated because the market was insane. And, you know, you can print money. You know, in Florida, you only have to go 63 hours for a real estate school to qualify to take your associate's test. 63 hours. And now you're in a position to take the state exam. If you pass, now you're going to be helping folks with the biggest investment most folks are going to have. So we have
Tony, that's everywhere, man. I mean, it's the low barrier to entry. You said 1.6 million at the beginning of the year. Well, according to NAR in October, we are at about 1.57 million real estate agents still.
Well, halfway through this year, some number came out that we had lost like 60,000.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah.
I think it's going to be 100,000 that are going to be actually gone in 2023. The big question is what's going to happen next year.
Yeah, let me just read. So this is Realtor Demographics, published October 23rd. 64% of realtors were licensed sales agents. 20% held broker licenses, 18% held broker associate licenses. A typical realtor is a 60-year-old white female who attended college and is a homeowner. 62% of all realtors are female, and the median age of all realtors is 60. Real estate experience of all realtors, 11 years, median. Median tenure at present firm, 6 years. Most realtors worked 30 hours per week in 2022. The median gross income of realtors, income earned from real estate activities, was $56,400 in 2022, an increase from $54,300 in 2021. Median number of transaction sides in 2022 residential sides for all realtors, 12. Residential sides for residential specialist realtor or broker and broker associates, 14. And residential sides for commercial specialists, 4. Formal education of realtors, some college, 30%, bachelor degree, 31%, graduate degree above 12%, associate degree, 12%, some graduate school, 6%, high school graduate, 8%.
Now, these numbers, are they using 2022 numbers?
Yes.
Is it? Yeah. So again, we had, 2022 was, the first half of that was a very good year. So a lot of people did very well. So I think I was looking at these numbers and I'm going, that's a lot better than I thought it would. Because I remember just a couple of years ago, the average income was about $33,000 to $35,000. I think we're going to go back to those numbers. I think we're going to go back to those numbers in 2024, because the ones right now that are exiting the most and the quickest are the part-time agents. And it's because volume is down and expenses continue to go up. In most areas, you have to be a member of the board of realtors, and that's usually going to cost you anywhere from $700 to $1,200 a year. Well, if you didn't sell anything for the entire previous year, what's the likelihood that you're going to renew again? So our industry is facing some challenges, not to mention all the other things that are happening that I doubt you maybe want to go into. But I think now more than ever, agents need to get back to basics and be as well trained as possible. We really didn't need a lot of training to make money in 2021 and 2022, but that's gone now. Now it's skills driven, skills based. And I think consumers need to ask better questions of the agents that they're thinking about working with. I think you need to interview the agents. You should ask them about their experience, what classes they've taken, what designations and certifications that they hold, what is their production. I think these are all fair questions to ask of someone that's going to help you navigate the largest single purchase most people are ever going to have.
Tony, I do want to say that I talk to consumers a lot. They call into the office. We schedule calls. You are 100% correct on that. And they're becoming smarter. They are actually requesting to have multiple lenders to talk to. They're requesting to have multiple contacts for real estate agents to connect with and have the conversations. So the consumers are becoming much more smarter and taking their time. So you're absolutely right on that. And I did want to get to some questions.
Let's do it.
If that's possible. Letitia, you've been so patient, waiting. Thank you so much. But I spoke to Letitia. She was actually someone that called into the office. She watches our show. We had a great conversation. My husband has an older home that needs a lot of updates to it, 100,000. And she owns 2 townhomes. Is it a good idea to purchase a new house in this market?
You want to take it, Tony?
Well, I think you need more information. If you purchased a new home, what are you going to do with the 2 townhouses? What are you going to do with the husband's property? What is the goal in buying the new home? Would it be your primary residence, or is it going to be a rental, short-term rental, Airbnb? So
I can answer that for you, Tony.
Yeah.
I can give you a little bit of context. So what she ultimately wants to do is her husband would like to keep his home.
Okay.
And right now she leases one of her townhouses and lives in one. Ultimately, they would like to keep all 3 properties and
Okay.
then be able to purchase a new property. So that is ultimately what they would like to do.
Well, and then they would the new property would be the primary residence then.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Well, to me, I continue to be a huge fan of real estate. Real estate is a proven path to riches. If you're in a position where you are cash flow positive on the other 3 properties, and you can get into a mortgage that you can afford, and you have some reserves, so if something should happen as far as repairs and vacancies and all that need it, then it could be a really good idea to continue to expand your real estate portfolio.
Awesome. Todd, do you want to?
Yeah, I think and Letitia's somebody that we're going to work
Yes,
with
we
you.
are.
So
Yes.
yeah, and I'm excited, Letitia, to meet you and help you out personally. But I think the big thing is with a new home and new home construction is very important that you know a lot about the what's going on in that community. You know, how long have they been building out and developing? You know, what type of incentives you can get from the builder. What can you negotiate right now? What are the HOA projections? You know, where I see a lot of people get into trouble in. I was just talking with somebody a couple days ago that bought a house into an HOA. They've already been fined twice by the things that they were doing, you know, unbeknownst to them because they didn't read all of the documents, the HOA documents, but they've gotten 2 fines since they've owned the house in the last year and a half. And because there's so many regulations. So I think when, you know, new construction can be great, there's a lot of crappy craftsmanship out there. So, you know, understanding, making sure that you're getting home inspections, regardless of it being new construction, is a definite. You know, researching the builder, knowing whether they're solvent, because there are a lot of builders that aren't right now. They're in trouble. A lot of builders are in trouble. So if you're going with a national tract builder, you know, understanding what kind of, you know, incentives they offer, what can you negotiate to get in, picking a decent lot. And there's a lot of problems that happen initially in a new development. And there could be a lot of drainage issues, grading problems, a lot of callbacks. You know, if you look in some of these communities, you can sometimes pick up a home if the development is established enough that they've been building in there for several years. You may be able to get a better deal on something where somebody has to move to where you can already see the settlement cracks, or they've already had their 1 year walkthrough. They've dealt with a lot of the crap, because a lot of the frustration of buying a new home is they push you to get you in the house. And they say, don't worry about it. We'll take care of that after the settlement, or we've got a department, quality control, that'll come back. But you live through that. You know, you move into the house, you set it up, you have contractors coming back, they're making dust, they're fixing stuff, they're basically, you know, making your life miserable sometimes for months and months and months after you move in. So, you know, it's not what everybody thinks it is. The reason why people have bought so much in the new construction is because the price is the price, and they were tired of negotiating on an existing home. But you can get a newer home, something that was built in the last 10 years, for a lot less in a lot of cases than you can get less for more in a new home. So, you know, and I've done that with clients where we've looked at new construction, and then we found the house where the sellers needed to move, and you could get a lot more, maybe 5 bedrooms instead of 4, maybe, you know, 4 bath instead of 3, you know, in a way better lot and subdivision with no HOA for the same price or less. So I think, you know, I see a lot of junk out there. You have to be really careful. And unfortunately, that's the bulk of the inventory that's available.
I would like, there's another comment here that I just want to address. Bear with me. It is, okay. So this is when we were talking about loan modifications being done, kicking the can down the road. And this viewer said, so your complaints are directed at common people and not where it belongs, which is with the institutional investors. I think there's a lot to be said here, because first of all, we as a society do not do enough educating in school. Really, financial education. We're not really given the tools to do that. I think they're becoming better with it. But also, what happens here? This is like a perfect storm. So you had, you know, real estate agents which were pushing people to get into houses which they couldn't afford. You had lenders doing the debt to income ratio, which were allowing for people to, you know, get loans that weren't. So I just think that we're not directing it to the common people. I think it's it's really a lot that goes into why people are in the position where they are right now, why they even need these modifications.
Yeah, and I think, well, the no, and again, we're not trying to slam the common folks, but the institutional investors, they're not going to go into default. They're not going to go into foreclosure. And so, there's a lot to be said about how much they've acquired. And I think there's the Congress is they're discussing some kind of a bill that might limit or prevent institutional investors from acquiring these type of properties. But I see the flip side as well. They also provided a lot of folks the ability to be able to rent properties and have a place to live as well. There was a time when my wife and I were not doing well, and we were able to rent a really nice, affordable home from one of these institutional investors. And if it hadn't been for them, we wouldn't have had access to that home.
The issue though with the institutional investors is they're not playing with their money.
Because the hedge funds.
I mean, people are investing, so they make decisions and write off losses all the time, and it's just who gets burnt are the ones that are investing in their company. But the issue is, the bigger issue is, should these institutional buyers be allowed to be in the single family home space? I mean, there's a big divide here on whether the government should regulate these types of buyers. They were never in the single family market prior to the '08 crisis. The buyers of the rentals were mom and pop landlords, which are small businesses. That is actually the heartbeat of America, right? Because it's the small businesses that, provide and have, a lot of the personal relationships with their tenants. And you're not getting that with an institutional buyer. If they're your landlord, the price increases are the price increases, you're going to pay them. And the penalties are going to be, enforced, and they're going to track you down and put judgments probably for your non-payment or your breach of your lease. I can't tell you how many people through the years of being a residential landlord where, I never once went after somebody for back rent, right? Never took them to court, never went. I mean, I just wrote it off, cut my losses, and I could have chased it down. It's a negative space I didn't choose to live in. And, that was my choice. Some people say it's not smart, but I have tenants that for years and years and years, the rent prices never increased. As long as they were taking care of the place, you wanted them to stay in, it's a relationship. But we're replacing that with these institutional owners. They have zero connection. They stick them with property management companies. That's it. The rules are the rules. They're the ones that are competing. A lot of them are driving the prices up. They were paid cash, so they were impossible to compete with. They let people, live in the houses for months and months and months till they could find a place for free rent. They didn't require them in a lot of cases to fix anything. That's one of the reasons that it pressured anybody that was competing against them to also give up these things. So the solutions are, do you say, look, for the first 30 days, you put a house on the market, you make a law that says for the first 30 days, only owner occupants can bid on the house. Then the seller says, well, that doesn't get me the most amount of money for my home. They fight that. I don't know what the answer is. The two bills that are on the table, in my opinion, are not going to get passed. It's all fluff, all sounds good. I don't know how they can force people, these institutional buyers that they gave the houses to, by the way. So here's the other thing. It was the Obama administration, that went through the crisis, the GFC. And it was under the Obama administration where they bundled up these defaulted mortgages and sold these foreclosures to Wall Street in the first place. Yeah. So now you're going to tell them, well, we sold them to you. You bailed out the housing market the way we wanted you to. back in 2011, 2012, you bailed out the housing market, and now we're going to make you get rid of all of them and fine you and penalize you. It may not be the same players, but it's the same concept, right? So, you really have to look at how this started in the first place before you start pointing too many fingers. The government kind of was involved in feeding this, this hungry beast that said, hey, look, we can make money in this, and now we want to invest in it. And we know it's a limited supply because you have the one side regulations and the red tape is preventing development and building at the rate that is needed. They want to say, well, we're not building enough houses. Well, we can fix that. It's not hard. I mean, they just have to decide to do it. They make executive orders on everything else. I mean, zero community impact when they decide to send money to, fight a war. I mean, they can do that. I mean, certainly we could make choices to fix the situation, but we don't flood the market. We don't want to do that. We want prices to stay high because if we don't, then the banks are in trouble and people will give up. Well, it's a mess.
Well, you brought up a great point that I was going to bring up is that it all started with the investors, the institutions being able to buy these portfolio of non-producing loans. If it wasn't for that, now we could argue that had they not done that, what would have happened to liquidity in the market as far as lenders being able to continue to lend? And what would have happened to those properties if no one acquired them and fixed them and rent them and everything else?
Here's the thing. If you're going to give it to an investor for 30 cents on the dollar, certainly you could give it to a homeowner for 30 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, I think it was more of a, how do we get rid of these quickly? And, the thing is that I don't think this happening in your market either, but the institutional investors, they're not buying one-off properties. They're not going into buying a property at or above market price and getting into a bidding war with other folks. They're looking for opportunities like this to buy them in bulk. So if that was not available, then it would solve a lot of those issues. And I think a lot of them are starting to unload their properties now too. So we may see those properties coming into the market as well.
We have a mega super chat. Thank you very, very much.
The mortgage therapist. Thank you for your super chat.
But very good point here. Please thoroughly vet prospective agents for the sell purchase of a home. You will be surprised how many agents, new and veteran, mismanage their own finances and don't have personal experiences with trials, errors, and long-term successes of owning real estate.
Yeah. I mean, and this is another, it's a great point. It's a great comment. And, this goes along with the National Association of Realtors, and now it's big problems for the National Association of Realtors. If anything, we're getting copycat lawsuits that are breaking out everywhere. Tony, I know you had said, maybe we don't want to talk about it. I've spoken openly about it. I think this is a transparency that we've been missing. And, and I think that the consumers do need to be more educated. And we're starting to see it, by the way. We're getting a much more educated consumer. We're starting through our broker network. By the way, we have agents that are in our network. You can go to SachsRealty.com, check out the map of the U.S. If you're not in Maryland, we have agents that we're bringing in every single day that we're giving as referrals, agents, full-time agents. But the NAR, they operate based on numbers, right? Because it's membership based. Right. So, the way they make their money, lots of it is the more members that they have. I think fees should be a lot more expensive. You talk about $700 to $1,000, $1,200 a year in membership fees, make it $5,000. Let's separate these people that shouldn't be in the business. And you know what? That's not a lot of money to pay to be in business. I've ran construction companies, own a contracting business for almost 35 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars in trucks, hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment. When I go out and bid a job, I have to, buy materials ahead of time and front the money on the job. And quite honestly, in a lot of cases, made a lot less money than an agent that pays nothing, in fees or operational costs other than a vehicle and gas and insurance in their car, and let's talk about the facts, right? This is a business that takes very little startup money and very little continual operational money. One of the reasons why, if we want to talk about, commissions and not percentages or fees, because we don't do that. We know that commission's negotiable. But one of the reasons why the commissions were set, by these, agents back, in years and years and years and years and years ago, was because these agents were self-employed, and the intention was that they spent money to get customers and to promote houses, and you had to do things. This is before the internet. You had to spend thousands of dollars promoting properties. You had to put them in the real estate books, right? And you saw them in the grocery stores and the sub shops and stuff. You had different regional books that you put your ads in if you had listings. You had no other way of getting them out there. You had to advertise. Well, sometime between the internet, creation of the internet, these agents said, I don't have to advertise a house anymore, right? Well, what do they spend their money on? What do they do with the money? I'm in the business. I can say stuff like this. Okay. If you're an agent and you disagree with me, that's your problem. You're entitled to do so. I get to say it because I work in the business, right? And so does Tony. So when I'm talking about you being in business and not spending money on your business and not spending money on your education and not going above and beyond, and no, for crying out loud, most of the agents have no idea what's happening in the communities that they serve, right? They don't even know what's going on. I interview them.
So I agree with this point from the mortgage therapist to a point. Yes, vetting them, in my mind, how long have you been in the business? What's your education? What's your production like? Everything else. But the statement of how many of them are mismanaging their own finances and have personal experiences with trial, are we saying that those questions should be asked of a real estate professional? By the way, what's your credit score, real estate professional? By the way, are you ever have bankruptcy? That's nobody's damn business.
No, I don't think that that's what that means. I think what they're getting at, Tony, and this I deal with a lot. Right. If an agent is not responsible in managing their own money, if you can look at somebody and say, I mean, look, they wear flip-flops to the daggone, you can't even tell whether they, by the clothes they have on their back. I can't even, when I have these open houses and I bring, if it's my listing and I'm there. And when I see these agents come in with their showings, with their clients, I'm like, which one of you are the agent? I'm looking, I'm like, geez, your clients dress better than you are, right? I mean, where's the professionalism in the industry first? Number two, if an agent isn't doing well, able to manage their finances and their business, how much advertising do you do? What type of advertising do you do? What are your brochures like? Do you have brochures? Do you spend money on collaterals, right? Do you have things to hand out people, or you just show up with nothing in your, no folders, no nothing to go over with people, right? I think analyzing this, asking a couple questions will let you know, are they spending money in their business? Are they legitimate? Are they doing photos with their phone, or are they hiring a photographer to come in and do photos on their $1 million listing, their $500,000 listing, right? Do they have floor planning? With all the technologies that are out there, you can tell whether an agent spends money in their business, on their business, or not, right? You can tell that. The problem is, if the agent's not doing well financially, they're not putting their client's interest first. They're putting the commission check first because they need it.
No, right? I hear you. And from a listing perspective, you're absolutely right, because the seller is interviewing one to several agents. And of course, you want to know, tell me about your marketing plan. Tell me about how you market the property. Where are you advertising? Completely agree with you there. Then there's the other side. Yeah. What about on the buyer side? Does a buyer need to interview the agent as far as how much they're investing in their business, in what sense, because you're working with a buyer. Now, here's the thing I would like to see, and also you mentioned about fees. I don't want to see a situation where my $1,200 a year goes to $5,000, because I doubt that they're going to be able to justify the increase with more services. I think what we should have is stricter guidelines for becoming an agent as far as education, and stricter as far as staying an agent when it comes to continuing education. The continuing education is a joke in most areas.
Yeah. Well, how would you, let's go back to this comment because I like it. How would you vet out a buyer's agent?
Me personally?
Yeah, if you were, how would you be able to tell, is this buyer's agent successful and, make enough money, have their life in order, have their life organized? What kind of a question? Let's help some buyers out here. How can a buyer vet out a buyer's agent?
Well, I mean, they should vet them out in the categories that I listed. Tell me how many years of experience. Are you part-time or full-time? Tell me about the company you're with. Tell me about the support. Tell me about your sales. All that's fine. But are we saying that you should, like, for example, does an attorney or a doctor become any less qualified to do their job if they file bankruptcy because they weren't necessarily fully responsible? I don't think that those two are one. Now, I would want my accountant. Want my accountant to be not going through bankruptcy themselves.
I'm not reading where they're asking about bankruptcy here. Am I missing?
No, I'm just saying.
It just says that they mismanage. You'll be surprised how many agents, new and veteran, mismanage their own finances.
I'll give you a perfect example of the number one question I would ask a buyer's agent. Do you own a home? How about that one?
Let's extrapolate that, because I remember a time when I didn't own a home.
Okay.
And I think that's really, really
Why didn't you own a home?
Because at that time I could not afford it.
Well, that's a good way to find out on their finances, isn't it?
I don't agree with that in the slightest. I think that is highly unfair. There's a lot of excellent.
It's a valid question. You're selling me on why I should own a home. And look, and then let's talk about it. It's like going to the Mercedes dealer and the guy drives a Honda, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody that drives a Honda Accord. But if I go into a place and this salesperson is selling me on a Mercedes Benz, the first question that I'm going to ask them when I walk in there, when they tell me that this is the best car you can buy, and this is everybody should own one of these things, I'm just simply going to ask them, where's yours? Now, and I'm not putting down people because they don't own a home, Tony. It's not my point. But my point is, if you want to find out about somebody's financial position in business, if you want to go big, let me put it this way. If you're going to go in and have a builder build a home, right? You're going to ask a builder. Are you going to ask them, do you care about their financial position if they're going to build you a home?
Oh, because they're building a home, they have to complete it. But an agent helping somebody to find the home that they're looking for, negotiate on their behalf, get the price, I don't think they become a better or less of an agent because they're a homeowner themselves.
Do you think that they would be a better agent if they were?
No, I don't.
Come on, man.
No, because where does it end?
Tony?
What does it end? Are you a homeowner?
How about what
Yes.
it costs to own a home? What to look for? What things that you're going to come up against? Affordability issues. I mean,
You're
if you
saying
don't,
that our industry should only be comprised of real estate agents that are actually homeowners themselves. And let's not stop there. Let's further ask them, but did you buy it on your own merits or did you inherit that home? Was it your income or was it your spouse's income? See what I'm saying is where does it end?
I hear you. Look, there's arguments on both sides. I think it's a valid point. I think that there's if we're talking about one of the biggest buyer remorses this is you said it. This is the largest purchase. If you want to make it to where people are properly educated, and this is the whole problem with the industry, right? Because when you go through school and you learn, you learn that, look, we don't want you to do anything but find a ready, willing, capable buyer for a home. You're not supposed to do anything else. You don't give them any advice. You don't tell them anything. You're not an expert on home inspections. Don't do it. You're not a this, don't do it. What we do is we say, okay, and the most important purchase of somebody's house, what we're basically saying is that you don't have to do anything but be a salesman. And that's why they hate us. That's why the majority of people don't like real estate agents, because they don't feel like they did anything to help them. The majority of there's a lot of buyer agents out there that all they did was write an offer, maybe 15 of them, but they wrote a lot of them didn't even look at the house that the people bought, Tony.
No, listen, not all realtors are created equally, without a doubt, and I think buyers and sellers should vet their agents. We're on the same page there. But I think that public perception and reality are two different things. You and I both know how much work goes into representing a buyer in the purchase of a home. And getting under contract is only the beginning. There's maybe 30 other steps that we have to go to get to the closing.
For some agents, the majority of them don't have a clue. All they do is try and keep the deal together, man.
Hey, listen,
all they want to do is
I'm
get to
on
the
same
finish
page.
line.
Should we have fewer real estate agents in the business? Without a doubt. Remember, I started by saying we did not need 1.6 million realtors. So I'm going to be perfectly okay if the realtor count gets down to 1 million or 900,000. What's going to happen is only the best of the best are still in the business, and they're the ones that are proven. So we're okay there. But if we're going to fix it for years to come, I think we need to fix it at the real estate school level. And let's actually teach them stuff that they're going to use in the field versus just enough to pass the test. You and I both know that when you exit real estate school, you're clueless on how to work real estate. That's where the studying begins. But unfortunately, now you're experimenting on a live subject. We ought to just have better training at the real estate school level.
Yep. All right, we can move on from that. And look, and I'm not saying don't buy a house from an agent that doesn't own a home. What I'm saying is that's a good question to ask to determine their financial abilities as a business person.
You know what I plan on do from now on? I'm going to add that now to my repertoire. Now I'm going to teach all of my agents how to answer that question, right? Because now, if someone's going to ask you, are you a homeowner? I go, not yet. In fact, I envy you because you seem to be in a position to buy that home. That's what I'm striving for myself.
There you go. All right, man. All right.
Okay, we're
then
moving
tell
on.
them to get with a good broker and show up.
Mm-hmm. We have another super cash here. Hi, Charles. Thank you for your super cash. This is why the government shouldn't be involved in anything, especially homes. Government only makes things worse on the expense of the citizens.
Thank you, Charles.
No argument for me on that.
Mm-hmm. And Emily is one of our agents in our referral network in Santa Fe, corporate multifamily, pushing out mom and pop. We have 419 vacancies today. Unbelievable.
Wow.
I was in DC earlier today, and the amount of signs that I'm seeing that we didn't see just 3 or 4 months ago, for lease, for sale signs. I mean, inventory is definitely popping up everywhere. And I will say I saw a lot more trash in the streets than I've ever seen in DC. It was bad.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's really where I was driving through looked pretty run down.
Yeah. And talking about what kind of is going on currently, Brad made a comment here. Christmas spending was the lowest in 20 years. I don't know how true that is, but I will say that going out, it wasn't nearly, it was busy, but it wasn't nearly as crazy as I've experienced the mall. I could get in and out. I could find parking. Really no crazy lines. So that could be.
I think that one of the things that's on the increase is the buy now, pay later.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. And that's just people living above their means. Credit card balances are just going to skyrocket after this season. So it's insane.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's constantly, whether it be, what's it, Klarna, all those, they're an option when you do the checkout now and they're like, it's bright with logo. Yeah.
You know what's sad? There are a lot of folks that's how they buy their groceries.
You're right.
They can't afford their groceries. They're having to go ahead and buy now, pay later just for groceries. You're
exactly right. I mean, it's to our point, right? I mean, that's why we think that home prices have to come down. I think it's going to be, my opinion is we have a meltdown coming. I mean, you could say you can argue it any way that you want. We have never had an artificially, inflated environment than we have right now. I mean, home prices, all-time highs, like I said, 7, 8, 9 times earnings. You look at the stock market. I mean, if you don't think, I mean, it's all confidence. It's so overinflated. I don't even know. I mean, what these stock valuations are to income, to earnings, they don't make any sense whatsoever. People don't have cash. Credit card debt is outrageous. Everything is so super expensive across the board. And, it's a mess.
I think what people should do, and we don't do this enough, is because, real estate is very local. There's some regions that are doing wonderfully. There are other regions that are struggling. I think it just comes down to the family level. What people don't understand is how many Americans right now, if they lost their job today, could make their mortgage payment next month. And that number is horrific because we know that 62% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That's scary. I remember a time when making 100 grand was actually something per year. Do you know that 33% of folks that make $150,000 per year live paycheck to paycheck? Ask people in the audience right now, how many of you right now have $1,000 sitting in your savings account to cover an emergency? And there's only 40% of Americans that have that. So where's the cushion? And I think what's happening is credit card delinquencies are all-time high. We're seeing the cars being repossessed now and delinquencies next. The last thing they're going to hold on to is the home. So, it's going to the dominoes are falling so that what we're going to see in the first and second quarter of next year, we're going to see the delinquency rates on properties because they're tapped out. They've already tapped out their cars and everything else, and now they can't make their home payments.
It's amazing to me how many parents have no idea what debt their kids have that have moved out of the house. And I've been making it a point as I'm talking with people to ask them, simple questions. Do your kids have credit card debt? Do they carry credit card debt month to month? And they're like, no, I don't think so. I don't. Do you know? No, I don't ask them that question. And what you should try and do is ask that question. If you have nephews, nieces, whatever, in a non-condescending or judgmental way, try and ask them what if they're in debt. And you will be surprised at the amount of people that say that they carry a $5,000 credit card. They make $40,000 a year. They have $5,000 in credit card debt they're paying minimum payments on every single month. Ask somebody, instead of just going over their house and saying, this is great, you bought a house, oh, it looks so nice, whatever. Ask them if they would have done things differently. If they felt, that they, if they still feel positive about their house purchase from 2021. Just ask them. See what they say. Do a little sampling of a poll and get the stress. If it's amazing to find out how many of these young adults that both have jobs, couples that both have jobs that are making decent money, don't have no idea why they have no money. They're like, I'm making more than my friends, but I don't know. I don't have any money. We don't have any money left over. Just do a little sampling.
Yeah, that's
don't
exactly
take my
that's
advice, Tony's advice. You just try it out.
that was the point I was getting to. It's just with your own sphere of influence, and maybe make it where you get together as a group and you say, write your answers down anonymously, and you come out and you see it, because you're going to find that, one of the most pivotal questions that we taught our members to ask back in 2008, 9, or 10 was, do you know of anyone who is behind on their mortgage payments, possibly facing foreclosure, and doesn't know what to do? We need to start asking that question again, because back then, a lot of folks said, yeah, me. They were in that situation. So there's a lot of folks hurting out there, but it's not yet in the public domain.
Exactly.
I do want to follow up. We got another mega super chat here. Thanks, Todd, for clarifying. I don't want to offend, but with my 17 years in default servicing, 10 of as a servicer officer, litigation settlement consultant for a top 4 lender, I know a lot of dirty little secrets of all income level consumers in the U.S. Goes on to say, this is the last of my money today, but Tony, would you go to an obese doctor to help you get your weight under control? And you look in shape, by the way, so no shade.
Well, listen,
thanks again for your super chats. We really appreciate it.
There's a whole lot of obese doctors and everything out there. And, I guess it comes down to do you practice what you preach? So I just didn't want to make broad statements because you can't put everybody into that box. I think everyone has the right, or should, individual basis. You ask the questions that you feel you need to ask, and you gauge their responses, and did they answer it appropriately. But I'm not going to just make blanket statements that say, every doctor that's overweight is unqualified to give me
it makes
advice.
sense. Don't put everyone in a box. I think you're right, Tony. I think, people have unfortunate situations that happen with them, whether it be health issues or divorce or whatever it may be. So I do agree with you.
But you can ask the question.
But you can ask the question.
I mean, you can still vet them. I think it's coming down to what it comes down to is that consumers need to be, more astute in their decision making. And whether they, look, it may be great. It may be the response that Tony said, hey, do you have a house? Not yet. I'm really, I'm honored. I'm grateful to be able to help you achieve what I haven't been able to do yet. That's fine. But at that point, the consumer knows what they're dealing with. Okay. Right? They're dealing with somebody that's never owned a home, or maybe they owned a home and lost it. Or maybe they went through a divorce or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that what my point is, and what I think our mortgage therapist here is getting at, is that consumers need to be more accountable for what they're getting themselves into. And if you ask interviewing questions, if you set up your guidelines, okay, now at least I'm going to know I can't rely on this person that's never owned a home to give me exactly what I may need here. They could have owned a home and still misguided me, but at least now I have a better understanding as a consumer that I may need to find a different kind of a home inspector, or I need to maybe bring in somebody else into the picture. This person's great in helping me get access to houses and show me places, and certainly nice enough. But I now know as a consumer that what I'm dealing with here, I have to take what the advice I'm getting with a grain of salt, as what it is I'm getting. Because I want to be able to say to somebody, okay, well, Tony, tell me, man, you've owned a house before. Like, what are the 4 or 5 things that I need to be most concerned about here? Like, when you moved into your house, what were some of the mistakes that I could list them off. Geez, well, I only spent 15, 20 minutes in the house before I made a decision. If I were you, I'd spend an hour here. Because when I moved into my house, I saw a whole lot of things that I didn't see before I bought it. when I was quickly going through it. There's a lot of things that you can share with somebody with your experience of actually owning the house.
Yeah. Well, let me share this in the spirit of full transparency. I shared this in my classes, so I have no problem sharing it here. In 2006 and 7, contrary to the advice my wife was giving me, I was buying properties left and right because real estate always went up, right? So let me tell you something. 2007 comes around, 2008, we lose several properties to foreclosure, get my car repossessed. I feel like I'm the lowest person of lows. Now, here's the thing. I'm still that same person. Did it make me any less of a man, any less of a father, any less of a husband? Now, I own several successful businesses. Okay. But who, of all people, who can be more empathetic to people losing their homes in foreclosure and going through that embarrassment, that humiliation? Who can identify with them more than me? Now, do I wish that I hadn't gone through all that? Yeah. And I
Well,
can
you just
share it with-
supported our case.
Yeah.
Tony, you just
Yeah.
supported our case, man.
Well, but
because
here's
it gets back to, again, you want to deal with somebody that has the experience of what they're trying to go through or what they're trying to do. You just supported the case.
Yeah, and I think we're going to agree to disagree on the whole issue of if you don't own real estate, you can't do that, because my goodness, we can make so many examples in so many different industries.
I didn't say not to use a person that didn't own a home.
Yeah,
I
true,
didn't say
true.
that. I didn't say that.
That's correct.
I said ask the question, and it can tell you a little bit about their financial position or situation of their business. Because if
So
they're successful, they probably own a house.
If you would ask me that question point blank, and my response is, well, Todd, frankly, that's really none of your business.
I say next, and I'd say you're not helping me buy a house. That's great, because that's none of your business. Why I'm calling somebody else?
How many marriage therapists out there right now are saying, "Man, I've had a divorce. I better quit the business right now. I can't do this anymore."
Oh, come on! All right,
We got some more super cash chats here. Charles, thank you. I've been looking for a home since July last year. I almost went in escrow and one last winter. I'm so happy I didn't. My dad had to get a new home insurance due to a $1,100 increase in California.
yes, yep, Charles. Well, you'll be hopefully you'll be buying a house.
Maybe I may never be invited back again, but let me go ahead.
We love you, man. Look, I tell you, I mean, it's we got to at least one thing people know for sure is we're talking
Authentic.
candidly. This is authentic. That's right.
Yeah, I think people are too obsessed with the equity. When you buy your primary residence, you're not buying it for the equity. There's no guarantee of price appreciation. And anybody that tells you that, they're saying the wrong things. If your goal is to buy shelter for your family, to raise them and everything else, you're going to go through different cycles. You're going to go through cycles where the property values are skyrocketing and maybe they're coming back down. There were people that bought homes in 2008, 9, and 10 that their friends and neighbors must have thought, you're insane to buy a home in this market the way it's coming down. Where are they today? Laughing all the way to the bank. So
I think the bigger question is if they bought in 2006.
Well, here's the thing. If they bought in 2006, in 2008, they regretted that. In 9, they regretted that. In 11 and 12, they started feeling better about it. Now they feel awesome about it. So at the end, do you need a place to live? Is it shelter? Will it provide you and your family with what you need at the time? And the equity side of it is a bonus. I want to address the issue of being underwater. A lot of people think that because you're underwater means you're in trouble. No, you only lose money when you sell, just like the stock market, right? If you're underwater today and you can make your payments, then you still own your home. 3 years from now, you may be $100,000 up. I just don't want people to equate being underwater with being in a terrible spot. You know, it's not making your payments that puts you in a terrible spot, whether you have equity or not.
Mhm. Want to get to a couple more super chats here. Agents need to bring a agent selection guide to appointments to give clients that shows clients what they should be looking for in a real estate agent.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a great
Thanks,
idea.
James. Yeah, that is a great idea. I mean,
Yep.
it's certainly, hopefully, people are writing down some comments and questions in our podcast every week to ask these agents questions. I think the biggest question is, from a buyer's agent perspective, is, are you full time? How many transactions have you had in the last 3 months, 4 months? Because you want them to be relatively current. If they haven't sold a house in 6 months, the market changes so often. I think the other important thing is, how many clients do they have in the same price range as you? Because, if they have a whole lot of people that are looking in that same price range, how are they going to pick who they represent on that particular, home? And we have an agent here that runs into that every now and then. And, because you can't write 2 offers for 2 different people in the same house. You can't do that. It's just, if you are doing it, your broker doesn't know about it because they wouldn't be permitting it. Right. And, we don't want to know about it. We want to know about, but we don't want to know what broker you're doing that with, is my point. It's not happening here. And Tony, I'm sure it's not happening at your brokerage, but that's a big question, because a lot of people don't realize, hey, if I'm in the 500,000 range and this buyer's agent has 5 or 6 people looking at right now in the same area, in the same price range as me, who are they going to represent? They're going to pawn you off, or somebody off, to another agent, and they're probably going to take the one that is more likely to get the deal. You definitely.
Can I add to that? Also,
Sure.
I think now, given what's going on with the lawsuits and compensation for buyers agents going forward, I think it's critical that buyers find out how good a negotiator that agent is, because that's going to be one of the skill sets that's going to be at the very top of the list. Because now it's not just about negotiating the price and all this, it's also potentially negotiating the compensation, so that maybe the compensation doesn't fall on the buyer. An agent that's a very strong negotiator will probably be able to get the seller to take care of the compensation, so that that's not an additional burden to the buyer.
Yeah.
Got another mega super chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wow. Appreciate you.
Todd, please talk about ARMs for once. 35% of all mortgages backed in 2008 were ARMs. Today is 4%. How do you get a crash when 96% of homeowners have a fixed rate? Please discuss.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I want to talk about this, but I want to first pull up a chart, because in our last Thursday night Q&A, we had a commenter who was an agent since 1986 talk about, how we were different than 2005, because in ARMs, yes, were terrible. And we do see rate buy downs that will adjust, and we still see, adjustable rate mortgages today. And they've really started to come on since these rate hikes, in the last year and a half. But one of the things I want to point out here, and Joe, I don't know if you can highlight 2005, but is this interactive, or is this just a PDF? You have to go to the bar. Actually, there you go.
There you go.
So if you go up to 2005, the argument here from this one commenter was, we're not going to see any kind of foreclosure or price crash, housing crash, because more people own their homes outright today than they did in 2005, leading up to the housing market crash, the biggest since post World War II. But the important thing to know here is in this chart, there's only a 5% difference between 2005 and 2023. So I think it was 37%, and now 42% of homes are free and clear of at least primary mortgages. Now, a lot of people have taken HELOCs out. But how do we get to the point, to get back to your question, is that, it wasn't just subprime loans and adjustable rate mortgages that was really the catalyst of the housing market crash. It was an affordability crisis, and it's all around. And this go round, we have so much more consumer debt than we had back then. But that's number one. But number two, the problem that we have is that we didn't have even back in the 2008 crisis, is that the housing affordability index did not go below 100. And what that meant was, even in the height of the bubble in 2006, when people were buying at the top, using all kinds of crazy ways of getting there, their income was still, should have, enabled them to pay for their home, because the home price was still, that median income earner could still afford the median home price. 2021 and 2022, when we've had, let's just call it 8 million homes, really 22 or 2020 to the height of 2022, you're talking about 9 million maybe home purchases in existing home sales, where these people bought at levels that were the highest multiple to their income earning. And they got money from mom and dad. I mean, let's not forget, people were bringing 50,000, 100,000 over appraised value on these home purchases to get in. They could not have purchased homes had they not been gifted money from mom and dad as down payment money, or the overage between appraised value and, what they paid. So let's just take it from a housing affordability index issue. People can't afford, they're going into debt. So we have a debt crisis, right? The only thing that saves the housing market, like Tony said, was liquidity. We are going to see the liquidity quickly go away as home prices need to adjust to where they can be sold, right? So when we start to get, we're seeing multiple offers on the few houses that are on the market right now. But believe me when I tell you, when we start seeing inventory rise to levels that we haven't seen in years, and it's coming, right? We start seeing short-term rentals hit the market. We start seeing landlords exiting the business. We start seeing these investors, Wall Street or hedge fund investment companies, liquidate, housing, because they're not making any money because their costs have skyrocketed, right? Repair costs, management costs, insurance, taxes, property taxes, defaults, landlords, or tenants being weaponized against the landlords, not needing to pay their rent, making it impossible to evict them. When we start seeing, these types of modifications take place, you start seeing this new home construction hit the market that has been, they've been built up and constrained by, supply chain issues. You start seeing these new houses hit the market at prices that they can't be sold. We've already seen builders buying down rates in the 5s. It hasn't worked, right? So it's not an interest rate issue. In this case, we're going to see inventory hit the market. We already know that sellers are waiting to sell for the interest rates to drop down. I think the way we're going to see the housing market crash in this cycle, it's a debt crisis. It's going to be an influx of inventory like we haven't seen in years, amongst the lowest buyer demand or capable buyer pool that we have seen in years. And that, toppled with what Tony said, unemployment is going to go up. If you think we're going to land this plane without any implications in the most inflated time in financial history, you're drinking the Kool-Aid. if they do this temporarily, even the numbers won't work eventually, in my opinion. And a lot of people feel the same way. You've got all these cheerleaders out there that are, inflating, continually cheerleading in an over still even more inflated marketplace. It's not sustainable. The only way that you can sustain it will be government bailouts, right? At a magnitude that we've never seen before, or you have to see wage growth that we've never seen before at a time of a credit crunch when businesses don't have access to money. They don't qualify for the money anymore. They're looking for ways to reduce their labor pool, not increase it. And quite honestly, a lot of these businesses are going to start going to independent contractors, which is going to make the market even more competitive because they know what the costs are of bearing employees on their payroll with HR issues, insurance, all of the things that go into this labor cost, right? And the expected employer to write a 30% increase or 15% salary increase. You can build all the labor unions that you want. It's going to shut these businesses down, and they're going to look for ways to automate like they've never seen before. And I know, Comic Lover, I love you. I appreciate you. You're a great contributor to our channel. I read your comments and and respond to some of them. I don't get a chance to respond to everybody's comments all the time, but I mean, you're an independent thinker, and time's going to tell. I mean, look, I'm not trying to say that I'm right and the bulls in the marketplace right now are wrong. I'm not. I'm just trying to say, working in business every single day. A lot of YouTubers out there, that's all they do, right? Is YouTube. I'm not knocking it, but I'm running a business. I'm navigating a business every single day, to try and get through, whatever is being dealt down the road today, tomorrow, next year. We have to forecast to be in business. You have to strategize. You have to plan. You have to know what's going on. You have to have a clue, right? Then this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
If I may add, it started with adjustable rate mortgages, and then it quickly spread to everybody because as soon as the recession hit, it didn't matter how great your credit was, you couldn't afford to make your payments. So it comes down to employment, right? And if I had to look at this, I've seen homes that were 300,000 that are now supposedly 500,000. What's more logical? That now is going to be 600,000 in the future? It's not
and wage growth.
It doesn't
look
keep
at wage
up.
growth.
You can't. We have no way to go but down if we ever want to open housing up to the masses again. And not even to the masses, just to anybody. Because it always seems like only a select group of folks can afford to buy right now. And you can't build an industry on that. So we're not, I wish I was wrong, man. But look, it's overdue. The only thing I've been wrong about is my timing. I really thought that this was going to happen sooner. But I guess when you have an American consumer that refuses to stop spending and you have a government that refuses to stop printing, you're going to push that can down the road. But I think we're almost there.
You talk about the consumer that stops spending. What we really need to do, and you're right, Tony, but what we really need to do is look at, who's spending and what are they spending on. The retail numbers that came out where they say that retail, I know we touched on, sales are down or whatever. If you look at the reports, the recent reports, retail spending is up. But they also put retail food in the retail number. And what they don't tell you is they look at the total number of what somebody spends, right? What consumers spend, that's spending. They don't look at the itemized list of what they spent or how many they bought. And what I think's happening is that people are buying less, but they're paying more for it. That's why the numbers are up. Just like how they say median home prices are up. Well, if the only houses that are selling are expensive houses to the people, the top income earners, if that's, that's going to bump up median home prices. I mean, so it's like, again, it's looking at where's, it's dissecting the data, which is almost impossible to do, which is why it's all, speculation and, propaganda, it's what it is. I mean, it's the narratives and the ones that know the true narratives. Look, I don't have to, either way, we're hoping that we're serving clients no matter what the market does, right? I mean, whatever it is, we hope that we're advising the best that we can and that people are making the decisions that they make, after they've been well educated. I'm not telling somebody not to buy. If they ask me, I give them the information. They have to make their decisions. We try and give them the best advice that we can, but people are going to do what they're going to do, right? And sometimes some people, they're going to do the exact opposite of what you tell them to do anyway. But my point of the matter is that in all of this, you have to look at, does this all make sense? And it doesn't. It doesn't make sense. Everything's propped up, right? If you talk to people, they'll tell you they don't understand they don't believe what they're hearing because their wallets are telling them something different. You could tell somebody that we're almost down to 2% inflation. To the average person grocery shopping, they're still looking at the amount of groceries that they just purchased. You can tell me whatever you want in your numbers and your press releases, but I don't see it. If my fuel is less expensive, but it cost me $4,000 to take my car into a garage, I don't even need the fuel if I don't have the $4,000 to fix the car. It's all across the board. The costs are just out of whack.
Amen.
Amen. All right.
Amen.
We'll try and land a plane. Wind it down. Maybe we'll land a plane. Maybe we'll be able to have a soft landing out of this podcast. I don't know about our economy, but look, I appreciate everybody. I don't expect everybody to agree with what I'm saying, and I could be 100% wrong. You know what? And time will tell. Time will tell everything, right? Mm-hmm. Whether a year from now or 2 years from now, you look back and you say, man, Todd called it, or Todd was flat out wrong. Time will tell, one way or another. But I do know one thing, of the people that we're helping or trying to help every single day, they're not buying the narratives that are being, preached. I mean, if you say to them, you think you're helping them by saying buy now, or because if you don't, you're gonna regret it in 2 years because home prices are going to go up. Do you think it matters to them? They can't afford a house now. Telling them that's not making it any better. It's not adding to the loan officer or the real estate agent or the real estate broker or anybody's pockets by, telling them that. The bottom line is, if you don't know, the position of your client and you don't have an idea of where things should be selling and what, whether they're, making a good or bad decision, if you don't care, then it doesn't matter.
We do have another super cash here. I'm watching about 20 minutes behind. Tony, the idea that you shouldn't make blanket statements is hurting more people than it helps. Please remember that the exception to the rule doesn't make the rule.
Appreciate that super chat.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Benjamin.
Yeah.
And I get what Tony's saying too. I mean, look, we're friends. We're not foes. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, we're both in the trenches. We're both trying to navigate the storm. Neither one of us are trying to harm people out there. And I do understand both sides of it. I just my theory is, that people hiring anybody should ask questions.
Of course.
And make educated decisions based on the questions or the answers that they hear. I think people are afraid to ask because they're afraid to offend. And the ones that are intimidated the most, that should be asking the most questions, are the ones that are the first-time buyers. I say, look, if you've bought a house before, Now, you want to go out and do whatever you can want to do, go do it. God bless you. What we really need to be making sure that we're educating is these first-time buyers, because we don't want them to go through what, some have gone through with bankruptcies and, and foreclosures and repossessions and things like that. I mean, we want to try and avoid all that at any cost that we can. And Tony, I was in the same position, man. I as a contractor, I mean, I was burned, by a builder, a home builder that's still in business today, man, was financially insolvent, paid me 10 cents on the dollar. Man, I had everybody coming after me, man, suppliers. And, it was not fun for, this was quite some time ago, but, almost 25 years ago. But, if we can help people avoid mistakes, that's what we should be doing. That's what we should be doing.
Yep. All right. We do have a question for you, Tony. It was asked at...
Have we gotten through the super chats?
We got through all the super chats.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
But real quick, Charlton said, question for Tony. Do you arrange reverse mortgages?
No, that would be an actual mortgage lender that does those. I mean, the opinions on reverse mortgages are split. I see the pros and cons. I do see a ton of issues in the future, especially on underwater reverse mortgages, because people are living longer. And some of these folks took out the reverse mortgage 20, 25 years ago, and they drained every amount of equity and beyond. So there are going to be a lot of heirs that are going to have properties that they're going to have to dispose of. But under the right circumstances, it can be a great thing. One of the things that a lot of people don't even know is that you can use a reverse mortgage to purchase a home. And that is an amazing opportunity. If you coming down from the Northeast and you're coming down with a lot of cash, why put all the cash into the house? You might be able to put half of it into the house, take out a reverse mortgage for the difference, and at least you're not house poor. You have the cash sitting there. But these are questions that a knowledgeable mortgage broker that specializes in reverse mortgages can help you with.
Mm-hmm. Were you going to say something, follow up?
I was just, reading through the comments. Tony, what do you think? I mean, are you seeing where a lot of insurance policies are getting canceled in Florida?
Oh, yeah. Florida's horrible. And this is what's making a lot of folks in Florida not want to live in Florida anymore. I'm thinking about getting my broker's license now in Tennessee and in North and South Carolina, because I'll make money just on the referrals going that direction. Yeah, we have issues in Florida. In fact, I think they came out that if your roof is over 10 years old, they won't give you the policy. What? So these are all the things that we're running through here, people having their policies cut left and right. But you know what's at the heart of it? And no one really wants to talk about it because it offends. One of the reasons why we're in so much trouble here in Florida is not so much only because of natural disasters. Yes, of course. It's insurance fraud, man. It's insurance fraud. It's rampant down here in Florida. You have a stiff wind that comes by. It takes one shingle off the roof or one tile off the roof. You get an insurance adjuster to come out or whoever to come out and say, yep, you need a whole new roof. So now the insurance company is having to cough up $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. Well, who ends up paying for that? And that's why so many of the insurance providers are just getting out of here.
Yeah, I think they're going to change a whole lot of that. I have a friend of mine just sold his insurance brokerage because he said, it's going to be just a mess, coming down the road. But he was saying something about, if the roof is 20 years old, they're not going to replace it. If it has damage, or they're only going to cover, materials, or there's some things happening. And I know Florida, Texas, it's the same thing. I mean, Texas has a lot of hail damage. These states where, Oklahoma, where there's a lot of, wind and bad weather. We have a lot of bad weather here from time to time. But I think if we're talking about, insurance policies being canceled in Florida, I don't know how that's not going to just directly crash Florida home prices, because now you're dealing with people that can only buy that have cash. that have to self-insure because they're not going to get mortgages. I mean, you can't get a loan on a house that you can't get an insurance policy.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
then it's going to take all the equity down to, what someone is willing to stroke a check for to own the property, because they're going to be at risk. And when you look at things that happened like in Fort Myers and, I mean, my gosh, that was like the ground zero for the last, what hurricane was it? Last big one that just came through?
Yeah, I don't remember, but something else
They
too.
leveled.
We are seeing a big trend now of folks that do not have mortgages, canceling their insurance policies. And how risky is that? Especially in a state that you never know from year to year if you're going to get hit with a hurricane or not.
Yeah.
So imagine those storms coming through and a larger percentage of individuals there not having any insurance at all.
That's crazy. All right, let's take a couple more and we'll roll out.
Perfect. Sounds good. What will new homeowners do who paid top dollar for their properties?
Tony, you want to take it?
Cry. Yeah. Well, it's going to be everything from crying. Here's the thing. What is your intention? Yes, there's folks that were so desperate to get into a property they paid $50,000 to $100,000 above appraised price. What was their motivation? They need a place to live. They want to raise their families. They want to protect and shelter some of their income by having the tax advantages. If you are in that situation and the property values come down, I hope and pray that you don't have to sell. That's it. I hope and pray that you can ride it out and you can stay where you're at until hopefully things correct. But yes, toward the end of 2022, Black Knight came out with a report that stated that already 270,000 homes that were purchased in 2022 were already underwater. So it comes down to how long are you going to hold on to the property? Because I'm still a big believer that long term real estate's the best investment you can have. But if you bought it to flip it, or if you bought it to sell it in the next year or two, you're going to be very disappointed.
Yeah, I think that is the key. If how long you're going to stay in it. I think, I think it was Zillow that came out with a report that said, I think it was 15 years. If you bought a house in 21 or in the last several years, 15 years was the number that you had to live in the house in order to break even. And, I think the biggest thing, so you really have two scenarios. Whether you can financially afford to stay there is number one, based on the condition. So many people, what we saw was so many people bought houses in 15 minutes of seeing the house and waived their rights to a home inspection. And they moved in and said, oh my gosh, like this house has a lot of problems. And we're seeing a lot of cases that are brought to the Real Estate Commission here. And speaking to our attorney, just in having normal conversations, saying, hey, is there a lot of cases, being filed at the commission? And him saying, like never before. And a lot of them are against the buyer's agent because the buyer's agent said during, a walk and talk inspection when they didn't have an opportunity to really, inspect the house thoroughly. They're like, oh, don't worry about that. I've got a guy for that. Or, oh, don't worry about that. Oh, it'll be fine. Or if you ask for that, you're not going to get the house. And so it wasn't about, for a period of a couple of years, it wasn't really about, what should you do? It's what you must do or not ask for to get the property, because other than that, you're wasting everybody's time, was the attitude, right? Like, I'm not going to put the offer and ask for that because you're not going to get it. So I think that's where we've gotten the most buyer remorse. So for a lot of these buyers that bought from the pandemic, through really mid 2022, for that 2.5 year period, these are the buyers that, if we had to say, are potentially in the most problem with their situation. They can't afford to fix the house. They want to move. They didn't realize that the neighborhood that they bought in, they don't want to be in there anymore. They didn't vet out their lifestyle or their work environment. They thought they were going to be remote, and now they're being called back to the office. A lot of these people are the ones that are in trouble. Like Tony said, if you're going to live in it for 10 years, 15 years, you will probably get to a point to where you can at least break even, depending on what it is that it costs you to fix the house up. And that's where a lot of other people don't realize. And when Tony's saying it's a lifestyle, it's not necessarily an investment. People don't really realize that, because that is so true. You have to update a house. If you live in a house for 15 years and don't do anything to it, you'll probably never have another opportunity like the sellers in that 2-year period, 2.5-year period, like never before, didn't have to do anything. They had deferred maintenance, things that were broken, and they sold it for top dollar anyway. Chances are, if you bought one of those houses, you're not going to have that luxury when you go to sell it in 7, 8, or 10 years.
Agreed.
So you're going to have to suck it up, save your money, because you may need it to get out. Which is, we shouldn't have amnesia in these, periods of time. We should remember them. We should document them. We should learn by some of this.
Yep.
And by the way, there are a lot of other investments that you can be doing. If you're buying a house, people want to say, well, if you missed the opportunity, then you didn't have the equity that your friend had or whatever. I mean, you could invest in something else.
One more question.
Sure.
Okay. How do we create regulations without distorting housing market?
Tony?
Well, I'm not a big government fan. I'm not into regulations. I think, like another one of your callers or mentioned, the more the government gets involved, the more complicated it gets and the more screwed up it seems to happen. So regulations are needed for safety purposes, of course, and all that kind of thing. But I'd rather the government not dictate when I can sell, how I can sell, to who I can sell, for how much I can sell. I'd rather let the market decide that.
I 100% agree. I mean, I think that I think a lot of it allows them to come in and add regulation. These things get out of whack and they add regulation so that they can have more control. And ultimately the control means more costs. And, I think if we were to let things work themselves out back in the financial crisis, if, we're worrying about neighborhood, blight, and the neighbor having tall grass and things like that. I mean, certainly the neighbor that's living next to the abandoned property that has tall grass could certainly go over and cut the grass. I mean, I think that there's things that could work their way out, but I don't think that we would have the affordability crisis that we have if we weren't, kicking cans down the road. And when we look back at the issues that we had before, the government was as big as they are now, things worked their way out. Every couple of years we'd have had a recession or a panic or a depression, and, they kind of sorted themselves out. But what we did is we created these committees for each one of these issues. And now these committees, need other issues so that they can keep their committees. I mean, it's crazy. So we're creating issues. Let the stuff sort its way out and let the markets, fix themselves, I think. And they will. They will. Yeah, I agree. All right, guys. With Tony, man, we love you. We appreciate you so much for being on with us and even subjecting yourself to, me.
I don't know what kind of mail I'm going to get or comments. I'm afraid to look.
They love you.
I may wait until tomorrow.
Right. I think they said stuff like, finally, somebody had stood up against Todd. I don't know.
They like it. They like it when there's differing of opinions. We don't get that all the time. So this was good, and people love it.
I respect you. I love your work, man. If you want to check out Tony, go over to. He needs to do more YouTube stuff because he's really good. He's a great educator. He's a great public speaker. He's a great trainer and a great leader. And I do have a lot of respect for him. And we, our bantering back and forth is nothing
it's healthy.
less
It's healthy
than respect.
And I love you guys. I love what you're doing, man. I love your courage. I love your guts. I like how you tell it like it is. We need more people like you. So anytime that I can contribute, just call on me. I'm there.
Yeah, and check out the video we did on Saturday. I mean, Tony, gave a lot of great information. All of his information is in the show notes. Cruise on over, subscribe to his YouTube channel, and we've got a couple commenters where they want you to be a regular contributor, so we'll have to take them up on that. So, Tony, thank you, man. All right.
Hey, how about this? Can I ask you one thing though?
Yeah, man.
Would you wish my sister happy birthday? Since I'm probably in trouble there. We say happy birthday, Jeanette.
Jeanette, wish you a happy. I tell you what, you are so blessed that you have a birthday in the middle of the holiday season, and I just know that you are surrounded by family, minus Tony, and we appreciate you letting us have him tonight. And don't be too mad at him, but happy birthday, and we wish you many, many, many more.
Thank you so much.
God bless
Happy
you, buddy.
New Year to you guys.
Happy
you.
New Year to
Happy
you.
New Year.
All right, guys. We thank you very much for spending your Tuesday nights with us.
Yeah, really amazing show. Tony, thank you so much.
One of the things that I'm going to ask everybody to do this year, because we do need to get more of the word out to people that need to know it about the real estate business, because they don't hear it a lot, even from their peers that are helping them to buy a house. But one of the biggest compliments you can do for us is sharing our content, sharing our channel, sharing our videos that you think someone needs to hear, and see if we can't expand our reach here in 2024. So God bless everybody. We appreciate you. See you next time.
We'll see you next year.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.